Stream resumed.
Oh goodness, I hadn't got all that right.
Why isn't that showing that? Okay, it's working.
Check score came up. We still had the same.
far? Root beer? Yeah. Beer when it's near?
I'm trying to wait till one more get here. We about to get rolling. Well, we don't really have to have one for this, but I try to get. I like to have 3. You know what I mean? How y'all looking? Y'all good? Ronnie, you good? You good? Guys, we want to thank everybody for being here today. As we get ready to go into our budget workshop, we're going to open up with a word of prayer. I'm going to ask, I think I'm going to ask Commissioner Sanders if she would lead us in prayer. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Cowan if he would lead us in our pledge tonight. Thank you.
Let us bow our heads. Father God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this day. We thank you for allowing us to be a part of this community, to be able to look over this budget and be able to do what's right for our citizens and do what's right for our community. Lord, lead us and guide us and open our hearts and mind and be able to listen to one another and be able to discuss things in proper procedure and in order. In Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Again, guys, thank you so much for being here today. We want to turn it over to our county manager, Mr. Kerr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we were going to do here, we know that we had not gone over the BOC budget, so we wanted to do that and then allow, then I think we would just open it up for the questions from the commissioners to talk about whatever concerns or whatever issues that they may have some questions over. So the Board of Commissioners and staff budget can be found on page 12 of your books, and it begins there. Excuse me. There is an increase over 2020 salary increase, regular employees, we did add, there's an addition of a PIO employee. Also, there's an addition, there'll be an addition of a grant writer if that position is approved. And also, that number also reflects the salary, would be the salary increases over the step increases for the employees, as well as the increases for the Board of Commissioners. And then the lines down to professional contracted services are associated, those increases are associated with the increase in the salary lines and the personnel lines. The first line there, professional contracted services, is we budgeted at 28.5 this year, and that is an increase over last year's budget. What comes out of this budget primarily is the Newton County Tomorrow, which is $18,000 a year, and then we also we budgeted our retreat in this line, and assuming we are going to do another retreat, that was $10,000. So that's where the increase came there. Legal services, we budgeted $600,000. Currently, we have the county attorney position budgeted for, that position has been advertised, and we are anticipating that it will cost roughly $450,000 or so to staff and to run that office, and then we've budgeted an additional $150,000 for outside counsel. The indigent defense legal services are for those individuals who request a lawyer, and that for a magistrate court, and so we do provide for some help there. The pauper's expense is a burial expense, and we have increased that a little bit this year because of what we have spent so far. Repairs and maintenance of vehicles, budgeting the same as we had last year. The vehicles that we have that are assigned to the BOC have a couple of years of age on them, so they're going to be needing before long, besides routine maintenance, tires is a big expense. And so even though we only spent $400 so far, or in 2020 we spent $400, but the vehicles were almost new at that point. So in order to help pay for the tires, we did have to increase that to $1,000. Maintenance agreements is the same as what we budgeted last year, $22,485. Those are the agreements that we have for all of our software, as well as our printers we have and copiers. The copiers that we have are high volume type copiers. So we do, our maintenance agreements are pretty expensive there, as well as paying for the copies that we have. Rental of equipment and vehicles. Brittany, can you go pull up the, some of these I'm going to have to ask for Brittany's help on. If I draw a blank on what all is in that line. 52, 522, 320. The rental is for one of the copiers, and also for our mailing machine and equipment that we have. The bonds is a little more than what we had last year, because there are some bonds that we renew on an annual basis, and some of the bonds are renewed every 2 years, some every 4 years. So that's why that's gone up a little bit. Telephones, pagers, etc. actually is going down a little bit, from 9,300 to 8,800. Postage, we're remaining the same at 1,200. Advertising, we did increase advertising to, or I'm sorry, we did keep advertising at the same level. It's at $12,000. And what we use the advertising for is a multitude of things. We place legal ads, but we also use that line to place ads, for instance, in ACCG publications, in Georgia Trend, also for special editions of the newspaper, and things of that nature. Printing and binding, we have 1,500 budgeted, as we did during this last year. This last year, we had all of the county codes were bound, and so once they were codified, then we received printed copies of those, and so they're quite voluminous, and that's why the cost in 2020 was so high. The next two, meals, meals, hotel mileage, travel, and there's one other one that's associated with that. Let me find it. Thought we had two lines on that. No, I'm sorry, there was a separate one. But under the meals and lodging and so forth was increased due to the fact that we have had some requests by some of the board members to attend some national conferences, and so we did increase that in order to cover that, as well as requests for some additional training during the year that we didn't have, that we had not budgeted for in the past. There's continuing ed training now that ACCG is offering that require some overnight stays, and so we wanted to make sure we had enough money in there for that, as well as the regular annual ACCG conference, and then any additional travel that had been requested or talked about. So the dues and fees. Dues and fees are membership fees and dues to things like the Chamber of Commerce, any professional organizations like some of the organizations that I belong to, like the ICMA and the American Planning Association, any dues that we pay to ACCG. So those are all of the things that come out of that. We are anticipating and are looking at other professional organizations that would be beneficial for us to join. For instance, we just recently joined the Atlanta Black Chamber of Commerce, and so there was some additional costs there. But we put money in here, one, to cover some of the additional organizations. We did up our membership to the Covington Newton Chamber. We raised it to a little higher level this year, and then we provided money for memberships to other organizations. And One of the other ones that we have, and some of the other ones that I couldn't remember, we do have a subscription to Zoom so that we can do our Zoom meetings. And we've also got some other professional organizations, the Rotary Club, the ACCG, GovDeals.com, the Kiwanis, and of course the Chamber. I don't know what else, see if there's anything else. Yeah, those are the ones I've already mentioned, yeah. So, I think that's all of them, but we did also provide money in there for additional dues or fees in the event that there were other organizations. I think there were some that we had talked about that we wanted to put some additional money there. Oh, education and training was the other one that it's in conjunction with the travel, and that additional funding there was to help cover for some of the extra. A lot of times attending a conference, the conference registration itself is not as expensive as it is to travel, so that's why we bumped up the travel more. But we do have additional monies placed in there. We increased that by $3,000. Next line is other contracted services. And in 2022, we had 25,000, and we've left it at the same budgeted amount. Some of the things in that other contracted services. Some of these things that are in that contract are things like Shred It, Georgia Forestry Commission. There's a certain amount of money that we pay the Forestry Commission to help us to ensure protection against wildfire. There is things like the bottled water. Stericycle is another one that we use for medical supplies. So those are all of the items, or some of the items that the type items that we place in that particular line. Indexing and recording, we budgeted for 2021, we budgeted 6,000, but we reduced it for 2022 to 3,000. General operating supplies and materials are at 12,000, and we budgeted just a little over 12,000 in 2021. I'm sorry, I skipped one. Local government fees, we budgeted 95,000, and that's a reduction of 7,000. Local government fees primarily are the dues that we pay to Northeast Georgia Regional. As a part of that regional commission, that is our contribution to support the work of that particular group. Event supplies, we budgeted 130,000 for event supplies. These are primarily for the bicentennial, but it also encompasses some of the events that we take part. For instance, our July 4th event, where we participate in the fireworks and those items, but also special events that we take part in, such as the Fuzz Run. We took part in a golf tournament last year to memorialize Almond Turner, and there's other events such as that that we take part in, and that's what these dollars are set aside for. But the bulk of this money is for the bicentennial events. And those events, we've had some screenings, and we'll actually have a screening this Friday. One of the other movies that was filmed here in Newton County. We also, special decorations. We've had a lot of giveaway items that we've given to people commemorating that event. We'll be having other events throughout the year, culminating with a very large community event that'll occur sometime in December. And so that money will be going towards that. The next is gas and diesel, and that's being budgeted at the same rate. Food is being also budgeted at the same rate as we had last year. Books and periodicals, and that is also at the same rate, no increase there. Small equipment line did increase from 5,000 to 35,000, and let me look to see what all we put in that one. I believe that's the furniture. Yeah. The increase here is money has been set aside for new furniture for the interior of the historic courthouse. We are in need of purchasing some new furniture for downstairs in the waiting areas. Also, the commissioner's executive boardroom. We need tables, chairs, there's couches, and all of the furnishings for that room need to be replaced. And there's also the desks that remain in the commissioner's office do need to be replaced as well. So we did set aside monies for that. We would may want to take a look at that to see there may be, depending on what is available, we may want to take a look at maybe revising that figure a little bit. And the final one is intergovernmental with Covington Airport, and this actually has to do with the fuel tax. And so we do contribute to that, and that's remaining the same, $37.50. And that wraps up the BOC budget. So if there's any questions, certainly we'd be glad to answer them. And if not, I guess we could move on to whatever general questions. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Well, a question I had, it may be, I guess, unrelated or maybe even related to the budget. It's the BOC room. In the last movie that we had there, they put up wallpaper. And I think that it should be taken down. And I'll tell you the reason why, because I think Tam Splash paid about $8 million to restore this historic courthouse, and for them to come in and put wallpapers and stuff up in the room, which wasn't the original, the way that it was done. And I think under their contract, they were supposed to restore it back to where it was. They were trying to make it into a hotel. Well, when you go in, you think about a hotel, and I think the papers need to come down.
Yeah, surely. And that can be part of the, we have budgeted some money in our facilities budget in order to take care of things like painting and all of the interior and the exterior of the courthouse.
Yeah. Commissioner Sanders.
Just a few questions. I know you mentioned that we were proposing 2 jobs. One was the grant writer, which we definitely need, and the other one was, you said PIO?
we budgeted during, we did have a PIO, an assistant to the PIO. I believe his actual title has to do more with video production, and I think maybe that's what's going to be, video production assistant. It was actually budgeted in this year's budget, but it was only a part year. It was only budgeted for a part year. So next year will be a full year of salary, and we're actually in the process now of bringing that person on board. So that's part of why that number went up, is because instead of it being a partial year salary, now it's a full year salary.
And the dues that we pay to the different entities, are they encompassing the whole entire Newton County Board, the Board of Commissioners, or is it for individuals? Because I did see it was individuals that was on the statement.
It's any organization that we belong to would be for the entire board, unless that for some reason there's an organization that where there are individuals. For instance, the dues that are paid, some of the dues that are paid to the Rotary Club, for instance, are dues that are paid for me as part of my contract. Encourages the participation in civic organizations. So, and there's a couple of other people that have looked at for membership there as having a presence at some other civic organizations. But things like the Chamber of Commerce and those organizations, those are for everybody. They should, that covers the Newton County government.
You have anything, Commissioner Calvin? Thank you. Lord, we're going to move on to, I guess we're going to open it up. You want to open it up now for the commissioners to have questions?
Sure, whatever the board has, and we can begin to go through those if you'd like.
Thank you, sir. Who want to go first? Commissioner Sanders? Commissioner Sanders.
I might be here all day, so you might want to go with whoever's got a short question first, because I have a whole book.
She got 4 minutes. She ain't got 3 minutes. So anyone want to go first? Commissioner Galvin, go ahead.
Okay. We've talked a little bit among ourselves, and we all got a little bit different opinions of different things, but just my initial assessment of things, I think we're a little rich in the budget. That may be of some concern to some folks. I think we need to, we still got a lot of trimming to do. And Lloyd, I appreciate the work you put into it and things like that, but again, just going over the BOC budget and everything, when you talk about travel and training and put $50,000 in there for us, we're not going anywhere this year. There may be some members going somewhere, but I don't know how much I'm going to be doing any traveling. But again, I just think that we're a little bit rich in some things. Now, overall, the chairman and I have talked about this in the past, not necessarily in this board session or this time here, but I'm preferring to see a little less in salaries and a little more to develop a decent retirement plan. I would like to see that, but that's not in here right now. And I'm not an advocate of adding a lot of people. I think we've done our best to get the county finances up to speed to where we had some cash in the bank. I think my intuition tells me this economy is going to slow down some. I don't want to be caught where we've got a bunch of people and we have to lay them off again. So I'd ask that everybody be a little more cautious about, I think it's time to slow the engine down a little bit. So those are just my initial assessments right now, and I know we've got a lot more work to do. But that's just where I'm coming from right now. So, thank you.
Well, if we could, since you brought up personnel, what are your particular thoughts? I mean, we've got, we're converting some from part-time to full-time. We're reclassifying several positions. But the number of new positions, actual new positions, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're looking at actually 12 additional full-time personnel, in the departments, and roughly 23 additional personnel in fire services. So is there a number that you're looking at? I mean,
No, I think that we need to be cautious of where we're going with our personnel request. I do understand the 2 fire stations that are coming on board. And I do understand the need in code enforcement and things over there. But I do know that for every person you add in terms of benefit or salary, and you're gonna have about 40% in addition in benefits. That just goes with them. So people are expensive. That's one of your bigger costs overall. So I would just ask that we go back and take a look at each one and start identifying the ones that we got to have versus the ones that we'd like to have. And let's start slowing it down a little bit.
well, the ones that we've recommended, you know, I got to say, don't want to sound argumentative, but I think we do need to discuss it. The ones that you see here as recommended are the ones that really have come back as needed. There were more than these requested. On these, the only ones where we put in all of the personnel really were the public safety and constitutional officers. But you know, one of the issues in particular with public works, we requested those equipment operators in order for us to be able to fully staff the trash program that we're trying to continue. Right now what we're doing is pulling, those people would be supervisory personnel, but also the personnel that we would use to operate our equipment. Currently what we're doing is we're pulling people off of the mowing crew and we're pulling people off of the paving crew in order to supervise those individuals, but we're running right into now the main paving season, the main mowing season. So, you know, if we don't hire those people, or at least some of them, I mean, even if we hire some of them, we're going to we'll have lesser number of crews that are going to be picking up trash, and that has become quite a priority for the board as well as for the public. So, you know, I guess my point here is that while I understand we want to be careful on what we're doing, but we have been very careful over the last several years, and you know, continue to do so. That's why during COVID, or during the major part of the pandemic, we didn't suffer like a lot of counties suffered, where they had to lay people off. We continued working, and we didn't have to lose people because we kept a tight rope on things over the last 5 years. And that's reflected in this budget as well. You know, I guess the point is, and obviously, you know, we'll do whatever the final board direction is, but I just want to make sure that there's an understanding that, you can't have it both ways. We can't continue to do all that we're doing, and I think you'll agree that things look a lot better with the trash pickup that we're having. We're actually getting caught up now. If we don't continue to support it with the resources that we need. So there's going to be a trade-off, and as long as the board is, you know, as long as we have a clear understanding and that there's going to be, if we reduce the amount of resources that we have to work with, then there's going to be a drop in the level of service, and that is going to show up pretty quickly in that area. So, yeah, I think that's something that you know, you all need to consider as well.
I think for us, I guess what would help me, I know that we did this at the city. We only specified a day to discuss personnel requests. And again, this is the first time we've talked personnel. And in spite of all the budget stuff that we've talked about in the past, we've not discussed the needs of each department and their allocations and things like, or their personnel requests and how many people they need and for what reason. So I think it would help at some point in this process to have a discussion of the individual positions requested. Yes, I agree. Some of them are going to have to move forward. Some of them are going to have, but for every one that you add, you have to add another 40% of additional cost associated with that. I mean, I just know what the figure is going to be. Again, I think in terms of salaries and how much they cost us, I think we ought to have, the board here should discuss where they want their employees to be, but I am concerned that our retirement plan just doesn't, like I said, it doesn't excite me a whole lot at all. And the only way you're going to maintain long-term career service is to have a viable retirement plan in place. So I would ask that we consider that as a option down the road. How do we want to move forward with that? Also, in terms of employee benefits and things like that, insurance plans, not one insurance plan fits everybody. We tend to come up with one and say, here's your insurance, you know, you take it or leave it. I'm not sure that's the right way to do that either. I think there's options that we can come up with that are cheaper, that may satisfy and work for a lot of employees too. So those are the kind of things that I guess I have such a background in that I'm aware of, that we're really not. And again, I hadn't said much in the last 5 years over this because we didn't have any money at all. I mean, the county was broke, and there were so many problems to fix. We've kind of been in a problems fixing mode for 5 years. Now I think we can, it's my personal opinion, we could slow things down a little bit and take some time and look at other options out there. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I got Commissioner Mason, then Commissioner Sanders, and then Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lloyd, when we did this last audit, was it just over the financials, or did it include any personnel auditing as well? And the reason why I asked that question is because I know that when we actually were putting together the strategic plan, I know when I came in on the tail end in 2019, I know Mr. and Mrs. Foster had basically stated that was one of the things that they went through and audited to see if there were any duplications within our personnel. And I know that there were, I believe they said that there were some that were duplicated. And so we had to kind of address those concerns. So I don't know if the audit that we just recently had addressed personnel. If not, is this something that we should revisit, maybe with bringing the Fosters back in to revisit that again to see if there's a way that we can restructure the way that the current roles are in each department, if that makes sense.
The audit that was done was a financial audit, so it would not have done anything with HR personnel. However, we are scheduled to do a salary and compensation study during this coming fiscal year. That salary and compensation study would not only tell us where we are versus market, but the other part of this study, you know, we will look at any of those. We'll be looking for recommendations too on what might need to be done in order to maybe give us a better system, if you will.
So is there a way, since we're talking about really looking at personnel and how we can potentially address that concern, because maybe there is a way that, or that there might be duplicatable roles within each department. Is there a way for us to go back during this budget season time to kind of review that and say, hey, you know, directors, have them look at their departments, look at the work capacity to see if there is a way to possibly trim back in some areas if there's a lot of duplicatable work, or is every single position in every department actually needed or not?
I would say that nothing is perfect and there's always room for improvement. But because of the fact of the lean years that we had, I would say that the county, with some exception, really has done a good job of taking a look at what are the roles, what are the, you know, what are the workflows, and how are we doing things. And for the most part, I would say I really think that we're pretty efficient. Now, there are some individual things that, yes, are not as efficient as they could be. Some of that, though, is not so much personnel as some of it has to do with some technology. Some of it has to do with historically how we have provided for our customers with the citizens and what they're accustomed to. And sometimes those aren't always the most efficient ways, but those are the ways that the public has responded to most positively. So I think we actually have done a good job of it. I'm not saying there's no room for improvement, because there always is. But we're actually doing a pretty good job of it. But that also is something that we do look at on a continual basis, is what can we do to be more efficient? How can we get more out of each of the crews? What can we do in terms of job combination? We've done quite a bit of that, where we've melded jobs together, but sometimes we just got to have bodies, and you know, because of the nature of what we do. But for the most part, we've done good, and we can continue to do that. Continue to, you know, and analyze.
Right, I'm sorry. And we did state that we are basically keeping all the funds for every single department in a contingency fund, and then we don't release those funds until they ask for it. So with that being said, are we ensuring that every time someone makes a financial request from every department, doesn't matter where they're coming from, that we are getting a very detailed description of what those finances are for, or are we getting a lot of broad description so that we aren't really able to keep track detailed of what is actually being spent? Because I think, and I'm asking that so that it kind of helps us keep our accounting in a line if we know specifically what it is and where it's going, because I think sometimes there may be requests for funds and we're releasing those funds and we may not have the specific detail to keep track of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, but what we do, we do get the detail. If there's a department that wants a, particular piece of equipment, and they do have to justify it. If they want to add personnel, they've got to justify the addition of the personnel. You know, it has to be, it has to be more detailed, and, you know, we're not looking for anecdotal reasons as to why they need somebody. We've actually got to look down and say, okay, you know, we look at things like how much has your whatever matrix that's being used to determine the workload. You know, for instance, if it's number of calls for like 911, that's one of the things that they use is you know, number of calls. Fire department also uses number of calls. How many things do they respond to? The Public Works Department, for instance, uses miles of road. That's one of their criteria is how many miles each year do we pave? How many miles can we pave? How many times do they mow the grass? Those sorts of things. Planning and zoning, how many permits are issued? So they take a look at those benchmarks and determine when, by that, as to when you need to have, when we would need to have additional personnel. So it's not simply you know, we'd like to have somebody else because it's been getting pretty busy. It's got to be supported by, you know, some background information so that we know that we need, so that we can back it up. Because I know there has to be, because the public's, you know, demands it. So we need to be able to say why we're doing something and really justify the existence of whatever it is that we're doing.
And I have one last question. I'm a big fan of organizational charts. So when we did the presentations, some people came with organizational charts, and that kind of like, I really enjoy that. Is there a way that, you know, on our website, we can state or list those organizational charts on our website along with, so say for example, all of our constitutional officers, we have their org chart. All of our departments that's within the county, we have all of theirs so that we know exactly what positions are out there, what positions are filled, who's doing what, so that everybody knows what's going on and who's where. Does that make sense?
We can
From an
certainly
organizational perspective.
Yeah, no, we can certainly get all the BOC departments. I can certainly have them put their, because they have the organizational charts. We can request that the other elected officials and the constitutional officers submit those. But yeah, certainly because we've got them. I mean, they have them. We can get those on the web too.
Right, and at least the citizens will know as well, you know, our departments, who's in those departments, those positions, those roles, how many of those positions are filled or available. So all of that information from a transparent perspective is basically out there as well to kind of control that also.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sammy.
Thank you, Brittany and Lloyd, for doing this budget for us. And, you know, I have a lot of questions. I wish we could go line by line. But I do agree with Commissioner Cowan. We are top-heavy. And I know I have a corporate background. If we were in corporate America, we would have trimmed the fat a long time ago. There would have been layoffs, and thank God we haven't had that, but we are very, very, very top-heavy. So we need to definitely watch that personnel and adding on people, because it's really going to, we don't know where we're going in the future. We're still in the pandemic. We're not out of it. We don't know what's going to happen to the real estate market, as we mentioned. We don't know where we're going, so we have to be very careful in regards to that. There were many departments that had increase in budgets, and their revenues were sent to me. These were departments that actually have money that's coming in, and they were in the red, but their budgets are increasing. So that's the thing that I have a question about. Why are we increasing their budget, but the profits are not coming in? They have over $1 million budget, some with $700,000 increase, some $919,000 increase, and some departments with $50,000 increase. We don't need to be increasing at this particular moment because of revenues are not coming in as they used to, or those departments are costing the county more money. We need to definitely look at that. Also, looking at that budget, looking at the utilities, I looked at it in detail. You had some departments who lights, gas, and water increased about $10,000 to $12,000 from last year. That's a questionable situation for me, especially if their building is not as big as the other departments. So we need to look at those figures closely to make sure those numbers are not, I wouldn't say forged, but are correct. So maybe get the actual itemized bill statements to make sure that we're paying the correct money. And there's a lot more that needs to be done, but we definitely have more fat that needs to be trimmed because we are paying a little bit too much in various areas.
The only departments that are set up to pay for themselves are the enterprise funds. Some departments do generate some revenue, but they don't necessarily generate the revenue, enough revenue, in order to support the department. And so that's why they're not set up as an enterprise fund. They're because they're supported also by the general fund. And in some instances, even though they do generate revenue, the costs of operating the department are more than whatever the revenue that's generated. So even though their budgets increase, they may not be generating quite as much revenue, but they're still necessary departments. If you can give me an example of which department you may be talking about, maybe we could look at it and I can give you maybe some more concrete, maybe more of a concrete answer. I understand what you're saying, but the only one, like I said, the only ones that are set up to pay for themselves are the enterprise funds. And we know that all the rest of the departments, regardless of what revenue they may generate, are going to need to be subsidized, if you will, by the general fund. So the fact that they're not generating as much revenue may, in and of itself, may not be reason enough to to not increase their budget. There may be multiple reasons why that budget needed to be increased. They still may need the same numbers of people. Personnel is generally always your cost. But it also could be that there's software that's being purchased that has not been purchased before. There may be capital purchases associated with the department that are necessary for the department to continue to run, even though they may not be generating as much revenue. The way that we do business may have changed, and so the revenue may have changed as well. But we understand that. And then the other issues, I guess, if you have particular, again, if there's a particular item that you're looking at that you want to point out to us, we'll be glad to take a look at those. There were some where they had some increases in utilities because of additions to the buildings or additions to the facilities that required that. Some of the ones that we picked up on were ones where the amount was increased beyond what the cost per square foot should be to heat and cool a building, and so we made adjustments there. But there's usually a multitude of reasons why there's something that has been increased. And if there are those, if you want to send us a list or tell me about them now, whatever, we'll be glad to look at them again.
Oh, we can definitely speak on them now. I know, thank you, Brittany, for sending me those documents, by the way. She sent me solid waste, and Solid waste, we shut down the convenience centers because we stated that it was costing us too much money. It's costing us double the money now to actually operate it. So it really is not saving us money. Looking at the numbers that were just sent to me today, and you know, black and white doesn't lie, looking at those numbers that were sent to me today, it's costing the county more money even when we closed down the convenience centers and it was free to the public to drop off their items. So it's costing us a way lot more money in regards to that. And in going back to your answer with the utilities, what possibly needs to happen is they need to submit those items to make sure, because if you have a new building, then it should be more efficient. It shouldn't be costing them more in electricity because they have upgraded quality products inside of it. So it shouldn't cost us more money. It should be a little bit more efficient if it's the same size.
Yeah, if you,
It's the
obviously,
same
yeah.
size. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. And so I'm comparing it based on the size of actually the building. So that's one of the things we need to definitely look at it in detail. That's why I took 2 days to study the whole entire budget to make sure we don't miss anything, because we are responsible as commissioners on what we're voting on. So it's really important that we take a look at those numbers in detail.
Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question, Commissioner Sanders. What building we talking about?
It was multiple buildings, but I know
Okay.
Animal Service was one of them.
Okay, yeah, I
It
know.
was one of them, but
about
it was
the same
multiple
size.
buildings that had increased utilities.
Right. I guess, you know, and you kind of like, I won't say stole my thunder, but I was going to talk a little bit about the solid waste too as well. Because I can remember when we were changing over, and they said that we were going to close down recycling centers in order to save monies. And, you know, the board voted to have its own board and et cetera. And one of the first things that I said was, from prior experience, because I've been here a little before we had it, and I've been here when we had it, and I've been there after we closed it, was the fact that people were taking trash before we got there, before we had our convenience centers in all districts. They were putting trash all over the road and everywhere. But once the convenience centers had been built, people would take them inside the convenience centers, and they would put their trash and stuff. And I was just saying that to ask this question. Now we got all this trash over the county. People taking no tires over, even over it personally. I see on I said day-to-day basis, when you can go find wherever somebody can find a piece of property that's kind of nobody's out. They throw trash, they throw tires, they throw all kind of garbage. You can go down Lassiter Street beyond the community center, you find trash out there. You can go down the other little street right beside the community center that's dirt. You can find trash all out there because anywhere they can find it, they'll dump it. So the question that I'm asking is why are we going out paying for people to pick up this trash that basically costs because they, people, take advantage of the fact they don't have where to dump it. They dump it anywhere. And so shouldn't it be the solid waste responsibility to hire people to go in and pick this stuff up? They're not getting us any kind of money back to the citizens, and we know that. And so, whatever they got, they hold in maybe in a special account or whatever they do with it. They come ask us for money, but yet we're going right to picking up trash. They're the reason why we're picking the trash up, because if we had our convenience centers open, we wouldn't have that problem. And so I can't understand why the citizens we're paying. We're giving them money to help them operate it. And I think Commissioner Coward and the chairman's on it. We're giving them money to operate it. And yet we're still spending more money that are not attached to their budget for picking up trash for them. So I'm just trying to understand it. Some need to be talked about or done or some type of agreement we need to come to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions for Lloyd and Britton? Commissioner Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lloyd, we talked in the initial discussions that the overall increase for employee salaries would be about 4.5%. Is that correct? Are you 100% comfortable with that number to get us? How does that compare to some other cities, other counties? How do we do?
When we started, into this pay system 4 years ago, we were, in most cases, 15 to 20% behind our competition in pay scale. So when we did our salary and compensation study then, we put together a program that we thought would be able to bring our employees up to get closer to being market competitive, and that we knew was going to be, in terms of typical annual government salary increases, typically run 2.5 to 3%. We knew we were going to be ahead of that. However, we believed that we needed to do this in order to get our employees competitive and to maintain that that level of those salary levels and those benefits. So I'm confident that with this year, then our employees will be that we will have reached that market competitive market salary for almost all of our positions. And so we will be doing as I mentioned earlier, salary and compensation study. Now, the results of that may prove something different. As we have been increasing our employees' salaries, so has everybody else. So we still may be behind. We may be, but I do believe that we're competitive now. So I think that once we do this next study, we can determine whether or not we need to continue our paying as we have been, or whether or not we can drop back to something that's a little more typical than we had before. Or it may be, at this point, instead of doing a step system, it may be that we look at going back to a pay range system and not have the steps. And then that the salary increases would be based on a range as opposed to a fixed number through a step. But I feel comfortable that this is what we need to do and this is where we need to be. I don't think we're overpaying our employees. I think we're being competitive, particularly in light of the fact of a lot of the competition we have with retailers for entry-level positions. In a lot of cases, they're paying more than what we are in a lot of our entry-level positions. And the market's changing all the time. So I don't think we're overpaying. I think we're competitive, and I believe that's where we need to be.
Okay, and so if we stay at the 4.5% level, is there any way we can eliminate some of these additional positions that are being requested?
Well,
I mean, do you think they're all necessary?
Again, I think it goes back to the ones that are being recommended versus requested. I think if we stay with the ones that are being recommended, the ones that are being requested, I mean, we've got far more than we could ever afford. But the ones, if we stick with those recommended, I think we'd be fine. Now, and we can, and unless something drastically different than what we're anticipating with the digest happens, there's no reason why we cannot afford to do this. The positions that are there are positions of need, not really positions of want. I mean, if we wanted, I could get a list of all the wanted positions, but these really are needed positions. There's not the positions as I understand them, the ones that I'm not terribly familiar with are the ones, some of the positions like in the DA's office. You know, I don't know much about that operation. I don't know what some of those people do, so I'm not sure, pardon me, why they may be necessary. Magistrate court, I mean, that's purely a volume of cases issue there. But the rest of them, and, you know, the rest of them, the development services, public works and all, those in the tax commissioner's office, I don't know. I recommended one position there. But the rest of those positions are all positions that are needed. They're not simply wanted positions. Those are ones that are actually, that are really needed. Development services positions, you know, we're continuing to permit more and more buildings every month. And, you know, we're gonna wind up this year, I think, pushing somewhere close to in the neighborhood of probably 800 to 900 homes. That's pretty significant considering, you know, 5 years ago we did 154. So we're continuing to grow. The market is there. Houses will be on the market 5 or 6 days before they're sold. So the market is good. There's a lot of still land available here that people are interested in building on. And so the additional personnel, we just need to help try to keep our heads above water there. And again, the public works situation goes back to trash. GIS has requested some part-time personnel, one to help with the transition to next gen 911, and an intern position to an intern type position to work part-time to help with special projects that they have. The senior services, their request is to change people from part-time to full-time. You know, their client list now, I believe, is topping 500 and continuing to grow. And they need the additional help to take care of those clients, but also to take care of the growing number of people who are being placed on the Meals on Wheels program and the other home delivery programs that are run out of our senior services. So, you know, all of those folks are really needed positions. So I don't see, you know, don't drop them. I'm still going to argue for those positions because I believe that we really do need them. And again, the salaries, unless something drastic happens, which we don't anticipate and really don't foresee, we can afford to do that. And I think it's necessary we do it and get the results from our study this year to see how what changes we need to make or what adjustments need to be made for the coming fiscal year and after that.
Okay. Well, to expedite things ahead of time, how does everybody, I mean, Mr. Chairman, would you want to ask everybody how they felt about the level of increase?
I can. I would like for Commissioner Sanders to get her a question out. She had a question that she was trying to get, and then we can come back to that. Okay. Commissioner Sanders.
Yeah, I was actually going to comment a little bit on that. I just wanted to put out there because I don't want it to be put out in the atmosphere that I or any commissioner is saying get rid of employees or not give employees what they need. I believe in paying people based on the market value and rewarding them for what they need. I think more so what we're saying, and tell me if I'm wrong, is adding additional to just in case something happens so we don't in the future have to lay off these employees. You want to protect what you have and reward those that are here so we're not adding on when we have a problem in the future. And also, like he stated with the 4.5 increase, That is really drastic, but we can look more in detail into that. My other question was, who are we, you said we're level to our competition. Which counties are we looking towards that we're comparing ourselves to?
What we always look at Rockdale, Walton, Morgan, Douglas. Some positions, we do look at some of the closer in metro counties because some of the more ex-urban counties don't have some of our positions, so we may take a look at DeKalb. We'll take a look at Clayton, we take a look at Henry. And then there's a couple of real outliers that we take a look at down around the Macon area, Warner Robins, that area, but primarily it is Metro Atlanta and the ex-urban counties around Metro Atlanta.
Based on, I know you know I had a conversation in regards to that, looking at Metro Atlanta or anything close to Atlanta, their cost of living is completely different from ours. So I know we're trying to be more competitive with Atlanta, Fulton. They also have more residents and more taxes that are coming in than we have to be able to pay those employees. You have DeKalb County, that's 700,000 residents, and Fulton has 1 million. So I know we're trying to reach that market value as those in other metro areas, but they have a lot more resources than we have here in Newton County. So we're going to keep running and chasing after them, and they're going to keep surpassing us.
No, I mean, they're not the only ones that we look at, but we do look at them because we are in competition with them for personnel. There's a lot of people who live here who travel to DeKalb, and so it really would be to our benefit to be as competitive as we can with them for two reasons. One, to keep people here, and two, to employ our local citizens. But truly they are, even though it is closer, their standard of living and so forth is higher, or cost of living is higher rather. But they're still our competition. It's like Douglas County. Even though it's on the way on the other side of the perimeter, one of the reasons we look at them is because it is very similar to us in terms of geographic size, demographics, population, industry. It's just very similar to us, and so that's one of the reasons why we look at them. Not that they're exactly our competition, because not very many people would be interested in traveling all the way to Douglasville to work, but it is an indicator of what those salaries would be to somebody similarly situated to us in terms of distance from the perimeter and distance from downtown. We also, we take a look at some of those other counties too, like Cherokee and even to some extent Gwinnett. Even though those are, we are in competition with them in some areas, and some of those are in the areas of public safety, because particularly fire, because with 24-hour shifts, a firefighter can live in Cherokee County and work for the Cherokee County Fire Department and pick up extra shifts here on their days off, and even though it's a long drive, they come and they're here for 24 hours. So that does happen. But what we'd like to be able to do is attract those guys, not only to come here and to fill in for us, but we would like to be able to attract those guys to come and work here. And so we need to be competitive so that we can do both. If we have some people, because we do need people to work part-time, or just fill 1 or 2 shifts a month, or 4 shifts a month, whatever it is. So.
I just have one more question. If we can just gradually get there, not just bang, we there, just take it to a level to where we are safe as a county, to where we're protecting the budget and protecting employees, but just drastically going to that point and constantly hiring a whole lot of employees at one time. We need to gradually get to that point.
Right, and that's what we've been doing over the last 5 years. I mean, that's why we've not been that's why I've been very careful not to hire large numbers of people. For instance, our fire department has been way understaffed for a number of years, but there's no way in the world we could hire 40 or 50 people at a time. So but we just couldn't afford it. We can get the bodies, I think, but we just couldn't afford it. And so we have been working gradually to try to get those people, and that is something I think we continue to do. And that, again, I believe is reflected in what the recommendation is.
Thank you. Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lord, how much money do we have as far as this budget? 50 million? I mean, huh?
This budget, 78 million.
That's not the one that proposed with everything in it. But how much money do we actually may have to spend on it? Because I think we were talking that we know we're gonna have to cut something, correct? So how much do we have? How much is
The total budget?
How much do we have, maybe cash on hand or proposed cash to fund it? Yeah,
Well, the total budget is right around 79 million.
okay.
And, we anticipate that's what we'll have in revenue, and that's why we budgeted to 79 million.
So we have 79 million, so if,
That will be coming in collections from property tax, LOST tax,
Okay.
TAVT, insurance, fire, all of those things.
so I'm just, what I can't understand is we've been talking about, and I was listening to Commissioner Calvin, and we're talking about the benefits for our employees. And the fact that, I can remember a few years ago, one gym made about $17 a month. And so why can't we figure out a plan to improve that, along with all the people that y'all are proposing that we hire, and some other stuff in the budget that we're doing? Like I'm totally not, I don't see why we should pay for folks to pick up trash. Especially since we need trash, we got to trash it because of what we done a few years back and changing stuff. And we need to spend money on our employees for benefits, because when they get a certain age, and I think, you know what I'm saying, it won't help me, it won't help you, Lord. When they get a certain age, like Miss Brittany, they're going to want a decent retirement if they stick with us, and all the rest of the employees, the firefighters. And we're not doing it for them now. And I think I agree with Commissioner Calvin that we need to look at it as soon as possible.
Start looking at it.
Yes, as soon as possible.
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, let me apologize to the board for being late. And I don't want to restate the obvious, but we're talking about personnel, Lloyd, and no one has been a bigger opponent of hiring than myself. So over the last 4 years, last several budgets, but I had there was a moment of it's time to get real last fall, when the superintendent of elections, or the chairman of the elections board, stood here and told us since 2016 there's been an increase of 22,000 registered voters in Newton County since 2016. So I don't know if that's just more people register or more people coming here. Probably a combination of both. But I can tell you, in the phone calls I get having to do with our departments, seems to me, and I managed people for a long time, still do, and it seems to me it comes down to a numbers game in a lot of scenarios. So what I'm telling you is I think I'm echoing what the other commissioners have already stated, is the smart increases are going to have to happen. I would encourage you, as they did, to be careful with those, be prudent with those. But the simple realization is that the and I hate to say this, the government has to grow at some point, assuming we're managing it wisely. Assuming we're managing it wisely, and I'm not in the day-to-day operations. Salaries, I've said it all along, I want to be competitive, but we cannot get into a salary race with other counties. We just can't. We have to create an environment conducive to recruiting and retaining employees. That goes without saying, I believe. And then the last thing I want to say is, when I walked in, we were talking about the trash, and Commissioner Henderson, I hear you, but the convenience centers have nothing to do with the guy or the girl in front of me throwing the McDonald's bag out the sunroof. And the contractor that stops on Pickett Bridge Road and dumps his construction waste for the day. They just, I mean, I don't believe the convenience centers have anything to do with that. But I don't have the data to dispute what you said about, the convenience centers closing. But for the citizen that's driving down the road, and I see it every single day, the citizens throw a McDonald's bag out the window. It's just, there's no excuse for that. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, they went throwing them car tires out the window. They went throwing them big wide beds and all them big old long poles out the window. And if you go around the community, and I will personally, I can't speak for what's going on, in District 1, other than the fact I got a lot of Kim people down there that know me and love me. But what I do know what's happening up here. And I can show you, because I'm tired of picking it up. And I can talk and call my friend Steve Horton and say, man, you need to come see somebody out here. They don't show up. And I thank the Lord, but he would leave, and Lord up come to the community. He said, man, what all this stuff here outside the gate? I said, leaves and stuff. But I could have took them on down the road and said, there's a heap of junk out here in these bushes where they've been throwing stuff, on Humphrey Street, this little dirt street beside it, where they've been dumping stuff. And I'm telling you, it's not paper. It's not McDonald's paper. And then on the part of Puckett Street that goes into the access road, now, that's where you get a lot of McDonald's papers and those little, I call them whippet balls and stuff, but you also get old car tires. And one time you caught fed old bed springs down there and stuff. So, I believe that not having the convenience center open, they only had 7, it was 11, I think, according, I think I remember hearing that number. Not open, they'd have people throwing trash every which way. And the only thing I said, the other piece that you missed, was why should we have to pay for it when we got a solid waste committee that's taking, I think you may be on it. Am I right? Then why should we have to pay for the taxpayers when they should take some of their money when they're not giving us, the county, anything to pay for them people to go out and pick it up? Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanders, and then Commissioner Mason.
I don't know if you guys saw the email that I sent from Rockdale County. That came from actually Rockdale County. They're utilizing their citizens to assist in paying them like $9 an hour to assist with picking up trash, where you can 1099 them and not contract them or have an employee on board, but it also involves the citizens to pick up and clean around their community. So that's a great idea that Rockdale County is doing to involve their community, giving them some dollars to assist with it and cleaning up the area where you possibly can get more citizens and pay them to clean up versus having contractors, temps, or whatever, benefits, and paying all that is costing the county a whole lot more money. And just to expound on that, my district did a cleanup this weekend. It wasn't part of the bicentennial, it was one that was already set. And we picked up out of the bushes in one area 30 tires on one street. So there is an issue. It's not just the person, and I agree with you, Commissioner Airwood, those person that's throwing out the window, but it's also a little more. And because we used to have a convenience center in our district that was right there on Brown Bridge that shut down, they are throwing all of their big items. We have mattresses now. All those big things are in the district because that convenience center did close.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My comment was going to be actually along the same lines. Is there a way that, and maybe this is something that we have to really sit down and the Solid Waste Authority will have to have that conversation. create some type of incentive program for our citizens to say that would help encourage them to possibly discard their waste in maybe a specific area, or take it to one of the current recycling centers that's already opened. Is there a way, and maybe, Lloyd, that's something that we can possibly look into. I don't know if this board can do that, or if that would have to be something that the Solid Waste Authority would have to do. We can do it. Or,
Yeah, I think it'd have to be solid waste.
okay, so it'd have to be solid waste. Okay. So maybe for those, of course, that's on the board that are on solid waste, maybe possibly coming up with some type of incentive program. I like the 1099 idea. If we aren't able to get to the 1099, is there some other incentive program that we can actually incorporate that would encourage them to actually discard their waste at a specific area? So I think that would definitely be something that we should look into. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm gonna poll the board now, commissioners, and just get a feeling how y'all feel about the 4.5% increase. Huh? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, Lloyd, based on what you told me, and it's a continuation of what we put in 5 years ago, I'm fine with it at this point. But I think you're gonna have to hold it back to the end of the budget after you get through the cycle of trimming it down and everything. And then you may have to fall back on that. But for right now, for your purposes now of working through the budget, you can continue with, I think, from as far as I'm concerned, you can continue with that number right now.
Pardon me.
Lord, right, quickly, we're scheduled to do a comp study real soon, right? So we'll know.
Yeah, that's part of what we're going to be doing in FY '22
Yeah.
is a salary and comp study. And obviously, this is a draft budget prior to the release of the digest. So the digest may change some things, and if we need to take a look at that, then definitely we will. But I appreciate that. I really think the employees deserve it, and I think it's something. And I think we would need to continue. We do this. We do a salary study, and we'll know where we are.
Since
Thank
we
you.
started that way, we're going to continue. Commissioner Henderson?
Thank you. And, I concur with Commissioner Cowan, but I would like to take it for our employees just a little step further. I would like to see if it's projected that we got 78 million, I would like for us to look at capping it off at 70 million, taking that 8 million, and maybe if we can get enough commissioners who maybe want to have a discussion on it, the 8 million, and work out a good retirement for our employees. I think that's something we've been lacking for years and years and years. And now, and I go with what Commissioner Collins said, now we might have a couple pennies in the extra in the jar. Now's a good time to look at that. And I'm gonna just close by this. We have the most valued employees, hard-working employees who have carried the county on their back. And I'm telling you, a commissioner or chairman or anybody elected, we're only as good as the people who work for us in this great county that we have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I definitely agree with that. Commissioner Sanders?
I just want to echo all of my fellow colleagues over here in regards to that. We do have some wonderful employees. I believe in protecting what we have so we don't have any issues later on, reward those that we currently have. And then, as they also stated, let's cut the fat. And then at the end, once we get to the end, if we able to put that 4.5 in, then that's great. But let's try to protect what we have, the employees we have, so we don't have any errors in the end, on the long term.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Mason?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was once told that a leader is as good as the data that they receive. And I believe that this board can only be as effective as the data that's given. And so these our employees provide us with excellent amount of data. I know me personally, I have experienced a lot of great experiences with our staff. And so I definitely echo with my fellow commissioners. They are important. They are vital to us. They provide us with a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of support to be able to help make the decisions that we make. And so we couldn't do this job without them. So we definitely want to make sure that they're taken care of on all aspects. So I'm comfortable as well with where we are right now with that percentage. And then just make sure that, you know, going forward, we're able. And then, of course, I know, too, we do give bonuses and its other incentives as well. So I think we can definitely keep that up also. So I'm definitely comfortable with that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think somebody used the word protection, protecting our employees. You know, over the last year, we've seen some difficult circumstances in the job market, and particularly at this moment, I'm experiencing with employees, and I'm speaking to employers every day who are having problems getting workers to come to work. It's paying them more to stay home these days, right now. So that, and given the environment and the nature of public safety over the last year, and what's going on in society, I am very interested in protecting our employees. Now, 4.5% is a huge increase to me. But if that's going to, if you feel that's going to help us protect what we have and get us to that competitive level, I will support that this year, but I'm going to reserve the right later in the budget process to given our digest whenever those numbers come in to pull that vote back. So I want to protect our employees. I've had the last year's been a revelation for me in terms of employees, so and employment. So I do like the terminology protect and protection. So that's the mode I'm operating in right now, and that's why I will support that at this moment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's do one more, and that's the employees. So you want Lloyd to go back. I'm asking this board. You want Lloyd to go back and look at which roles are most important. That's the information that I'm getting from the board. Is that correct, District 1?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I was not here for that portion of the meeting, but I have thrown the necessary darts at this myself. So, yes, please go back and take a look, and I'll include the commissioners, some of my thoughts as the remainder of the week moves on. We move toward our next meeting. Yes, but please go back and take a second look, and let's find out what we really need. I can't say much more than that because I wasn't here. I feel like the other commissioners could probably do a better job with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. District 2? Thank you, sir. District 3, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And also look at our non-governmental agencies that also requesting increases.
Commissioner Henry, is that correct?
It was question I didn't ask about the budget. I want, if our log asks me later on or whenever, I want to know, did we put money in the budget for our in-house attorney?
Yes,
Okay,
there is money.
I was late. Stan, I was late too. So I want to make sure that was in there. Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner McCowan. You good? You good with that Lloyd going back, right? Okay, thanks. Is there any more questions for Lloyd? Anything else for Lloyd? Anything else for Brittany? Thank you, guys. We stand recessed. We stand adjourned, I'm sorry.